Jessi Frick from Father-Daughter Records, and she doesn't know it, but her record company was a really big influence on me 4 years ago, when I really started paying attention as hard as I could to the underground and the bands and the songs that they had chosen, were promoting. Was one of the first kind of like really indie labels that I got into as a collection of songs. So I'm so happy to have you on this thing. We're doing 4 questions in 5 minutes. Question number 1 is, give me and the people who watch this some background on Father-Daughter, how it came to be, and what you kind of think your role is.
Father-Daughter Records is 9 years old. I started it with my dad, hence Father-Daughter Records. And we've both just always had a mutual love for music, and we thought it would be a wacky idea to start a label, so we did. And I've always worked in music, so it was something I've always wanted to do. He does not work in music, so for him it's just fun. And our ethos is kind of, we like to work with unknown or just artists that are really just getting started, help them put together a team, help them share their music, help PR, radio, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of got an emphasis on women and queer artists, and yeah, that's the spiel.
I would also say a poppy sound. Like for me, one of the things that attracted me to your label was that it didn't shy away from a very kind of poppy sound, a very, a sound which was not kind of pushing away and being aggressive in terms of sound, which isn't really my next question. Question number 2. How did you fall in love with music? What was the moment when you were like, this is the premier art form and something I wish to dedicate my life towards?
I loved music ever since I was a little kid. I had like a little Fisher Price turntable. My parents bought me a real record player when I was probably preteen. We went to a lot of concerts. I think it's just because my parents were so young when they had me that they just loved music still and actively went to concerts and stuff. And so I was just always around it. And none of us are musicians, purely just music fans. And yeah, I guess as a music fan, I just really wanted to work closely with artists and experience how they create something that I love so much.
What's your role as a label in terms of developing and distributing music? That's question 3.
We're pretty fluid in terms of what we do for the artists. So some artists come to us and they want us to do everything, like they're starting from scratch. They have no social media. We're like building things up from the bottom. But for the most part, we just provide care and love and support for these musicians that it's scary when you're first getting started, especially now with streaming. It's really easy to get your music out there, but getting it heard is a whole nother thing. So yeah, just a lot of support, but also distribution. And I was a publicist for 15 years, so I do a lot of the PR in-house. Sometimes they don't have booking agents, so we also are their booking agent. We pretty much will step into any role necessary.
So question, how do bands make a living these days? And it doesn't have to be a super huge living, but how do bands become kind of self-sufficient?
I think it's still touring until you're major label level, and you can get hundreds of thousands and millions of streams in a matter of days. If you're still on like kind of the indie developing level, it's definitely touring, because a lot of artists, they'll take advances, and the advances will help a little bit when they sign to a label, but most of the time they purely spend on recording. So any additional money that they make is touring. Sometimes merch, if you're really good at selling merch and you have a really good store.
5 seconds left. I love Sir Baby Girl. That's your latest release. I love. Who else should we listen to?
Christelle Beausoleil is an artist from Austin. We just released her record last week. Esther Rose is a Americana artist from New Orleans.
Yep.
And Lisa Prank will have a new record out this year as well.